As I mentioned, the intuitive design is really important for bringing those non-risk experts along with you in that model building process. And our development team actually came from the original PERT Master or Oracle PRA, OPRA. So they actually heard stories of the experts forgetting their training. So conceiving a more natural workflow was a really important starting point for Safran Risk. So their idea was pretty simple, just place all the model inputs on the left-hand side of this black ribbon here, and then select your simulation settings for the Monte Carlo in the center, and then moving through to show your outputs on the right-hand side. So this workflow layout helps you to quickly see where you are in the process of building your risk model. It grounds you, it helps orientate you, whether you're a risk professional or just a member of the wider team being asked to collaborate in person or remotely over screen share like what we're doing at the moment. So what this means is that you'll start to go around the loop here of steps 2, 3, and 4 of the iteration cycle far fewer times because your collaborators are spotting the anomalies and the issues of the inputs before you commit to running the main Monte Carlo simulation. So you're wasting less time. And for this reason, I'd also encourage you to include typically adversarial parties in the co-creation of your risk model, as this can potentially save you in lots of time in spurious challenges being fielded just before you're about to submit your final report, because they were involved in the process, so they had their chance. So you should find that's a benefit too. There is one key exception which dovetails nicely into the second enabling factor of all that automated feedback that I mentioned, and that's once you've run a simulation, the outputs can actually feed directly back into your schedule input screen. So this will allow you to see the risk adjusted Gantt chart for comparison against the original baseline. You can see it visually, and actually it's quite tactile for people. So we'll revisit this in a bit more detail later. And we're going to start talking about generating communicate insights a bit later, but for now we'll just jump straight into my favorite example of live feedback that you can get from Safran Risk. Quick sip of tea. Now this is the risk mapping screen, and I find it to be the most tangible way to illustrate to people, either on a one-to-one basis or in a broader risk workshop setting, how their choices are indicatively going to affect the model output. So we can see the risk register spread across the top of the screen, and then the schedule activities present down the left-hand side. Then this gives us a simple matrix view in the center that allows us to easily toggle on or off the risk mappings and quickly cascade a single risk across multiple activities with a single click on any WBS or work breakdown structure node. So all the child activities underneath that node would inherit the same risk mapping. So this is great for running quick risk, plus or minus 10% or whatever you fancy to do, across an entire schedule, or just targeting specific ranges of the WBS or specific phases. But better still, at the bottom of the screen where we can see how multiple risks and uncertainties compound together against a single activity to create a unique distribution is shown in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Now this is what we call our real-time analyzer, and it runs 1,000 iterations of Monte Carlo. It refreshes automatically every time you add or remove or edit a variable. So this means that your teams can see and react to this in real time and just go, does this feel right? And if it doesn't, you can respond accordingly and fix it. So it's also a versatile screen because it will actually inherit any of the filters or the groupings that you may have applied direct from the schedule screen. So you can actually customize the work breakdown structure, the WBS, or whatever you like, to instead focus under different kinds of nodes like geographic location or subcontractor or a chronological phase or any other imaginative use of the metadata that you might be capturing inside your schedule. So you can do that easily, see it here, and cascade risks accordingly to those structures instead. Now just jumping ahead into the main simulation outputs, but we're going to stay within the theme of automated feedback. Now it's worth pointing out that Safran has evolved the traditional approach to sensitivity analysis, which you might think of as being that supporting tornado graph, which is shown next to the S-curve there. Now this was necessary because tornado graphs typically rank risk impacts with a correlation coefficient value. statistical stuff. But beyond this, they don't translate or communicate easily. They are not percentages in the traditional sense. So what I found was virtually the same follow-up questions were being asked by all of my project directors that I ever worked with, and I can pretty much paraphrase as this. They say, thank you for confirming our suspicions that these were indeed the top risks. However, I've learned nothing new. We told you these ones were going to be the high probability or the high impact. What we want to know is, could you please tell us how much they impact the model by? Now, for me to do that using the tools that I had available at the time, it was pretty tedious. I'd have to rebuild the same risk model, but this time without one of the risks applied, rerun the simulation, manually capture what the output was then, maybe on a piece of paper and pencil, or possibly into a spreadsheet. And then I'd repeat that process for as many times as there were risks that we particularly cared to know about. And I could easily have spent a week doing that manually on a larger project. But Safran saw that, and they tackled this by simply selecting the confidence interval that you're interested in. Maybe it's the P80 as it says there, and then you hit the calculate button, and it will just revisit that simulation you've already run, but it will remove each of those risks for you, measuring the change and summarizing both the schedule and the cost model impacts automatically for you. And then it summarizes here into that table. And furthermore, these outputs, these are inclusive of any time-dependent costs, and you're able to also target against a particular schedule milestone or a cost breakdown structure. So as you do that, you're starting to reveal some other insights that will then have actionable things that you can then pursue thereafter.